Thousands of people go to the grocery store every day. That's how the average American person gets their food. They just go to the store, pick it up, and buy it. But food doesn't just magically appear on the shelves of the store. Where does it come from? Usually there are stickers on fruit and other produce that tell you where they came from. Just to have certain foods we like to eat, we have to ship them from other places all around the world. That's just produce though. What about everything else? Where does it all come from? Look at the back of your box or bag of food. It should tell you where the company is located, but not necessarily where the food is actually produced. Wouldn't you like to know where your next meal is actually coming from, or what you can do to ensure that knowledge? This is the story of where our food comes from, how it gets here, and why we should and need to make a change. There's a process marketers use. We like to call it the food process. This is the process where we spend way too much money, burn lots of oils, and bring things from faraway places just so we can eat them whenever we want to. The whole process starts with growing. You get seeds, plant them, water them, give them sun and the other nutrients, and that's all they need to thrive. Just an easy, simple thing to do, right? Wrong. This is where the whole problem begins. It starts with where we are actually growing these crops. Then the process goes on to how the plants grow. Before the crops are fully ripened, we pick them so they have time to totally ripen without going bad while we ship them all over the globe. Which brings us on to the second part of our problem, where the food is actually going to be going. After the food is picked, they load it all onto ships or trucks and prepare to send it all over the world. Plants may be picked weeks in advance, treated with chemicals to slow down the ripening process, and shipped to a place that takes days or weeks to reach. A tomato plant, for instance, might have been treated with chemicals weeks ago before it arrives at your grocery store, red and ready to be eaten. Health risks is one reason why we need to make a change. There are many different factors that go hand in hand with globally transported food. Some of the risks are due to pesticides, labor, pollution, spoilage prevention methods, and more. When making these globally transported foods, we grow them in large fields. In these fields, we plant one crop. Take corn, for example. We take this corn and grow enough food for it to go to people all around the country. Not only is this an inefficient way to do it, but it also destroys many miles of land. After this land is destroyed, it is unusable for any use at all. One of the reasons farming land is becoming unusable is because of the amount of pesticides we are using. On our crops, we are using immense amounts of pesticides. These pesticides are good for protecting crops in large numbers. Herbicides have an acute toxicity when you are highly exposed to them. These toxins can lead to skin rash, but also things as dangerous as Parkinson's disease, cancer, and death. A major problem from globally transported foods is all of the different and harmful pollutants that are being let out into the atmosphere. 17% of the petroleum demand in the United States is used in the food production industry. Another problem is spoilage prevention methods that are used. Did you know that the average carrot has had to travel 1,800 miles before it arrives on your dinner plate? Because we're having to transport produce so far, we have to make sure that the produce doesn't spoil before it reaches its destination. The solution to this is to pick them early and treat them with chemicals so they won't spoil while they travel long distances. Through the process of early picking and spoilage prevention methods, we forget about the most important part of the food, the nutrients our bodies need. We don't think about how much of the nutrients are lost through the different shipping and handling processes. Getting the freshest produce as possible is what the Center for Health and Global Environment advises. They stated that buying locally grown foods can expand the nutrition diversity. Also, the food would have less handling since locally grown foods are usually picked by hand, not machine. This is important because with less handling, the possibility of food becoming contaminated is decreased. When food becomes contaminated, it will increase how fast the food will spoil and decay. They said that transported foods are likely to be less nutritious than foods that are locally grown and picked. The longer it has been since produce was picked, the less nutrients it will contain. So, if you are eating produce that has been picked a few weeks ago and shipped here, it will have significantly less nutriental value than produce picked just yesterday and sent directly to the local farmer's market. Another factor that results in nutrients loss is when it's picked. Produce may gain full ripeness, but it won't attain the nutrient level it should have. At Harvard Medical School Center, they tested this with tomatoes. They saw that produce had a higher level of vitamin C, when the tomato was picked from the vine when it was fully ripe, as opposed to being picked when it was green and treated with chemicals to slow down the ripening process. It is better for local economies and individual farmers to purchase food that has been grown locally. In commercial markets, such as your local supermarket, 91 cents out of every dollar goes to middlemen, processors, suppliers, and marketers. Only 9 cents out of every dollar goes back to the farmers that actually grew the food. Compare that to the 80 to 90 cents out of every dollar that goes back to farmers when their produce is sold at locally grown markets. Technological advances, such as genetic engineering, have made it possible to mass-produce food in one area. The problem with this is the pollution. Pesticides and other chemicals cause pollution in soil and water. Mass production requires transportation from one place to the next. The two main ways of transportation are by truck and ship. Both of these are run on fuel, which, when burned, is released into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. This can increase the rate of global warming. In order to transport these goods, they have to be packaged in plastic and other non-biodegradable materials. The use of these materials and the fuel needed for transportation can be drastically reduced if more food was grown locally. It would cut down on the pollution caused by transportation and use of packaging materials because it would not need to be transported as far. As members of local communities, we need to do what we can to support locally grown agriculture. There are many different ways we can go about doing this. One way we can support locally grown food is through CSAs, or community-supported agriculture. Many communities have also started gardens together. Lakeridge has started a community garden and so far has been very successful in bringing people together and providing food for families.
So just what do you think are the benefits of growing food locally?
It's hard to know the place to start, but the biggest thing is the most important thing I think is nutrition. So most food that you can buy in the grocery store is 7 to 14 days past harvest date. So it travels hundreds, thousands of miles from somewhere else. It's been picked before it was ripe. Produce absorbs a lot of nutrients, and especially the sugars and the flavors come the last 7 days that it's on the vine. So any produce that you get from the grocery store has been picked before it's ripened, which means none of those sugars, none of those vitamins and minerals were able to all be absorbed into the fruit or vegetable. Then it's been sitting on a truck and traveling across the country, or sitting on an airplane and flying across the world. This is just sitting in the grocery store for another 5 days. You take it home and eat it 4 days later. So the nutrient level is very, very far down. The reason the nutrient level is really low is, as that movie Dirt explains, if your soil doesn't have the minerals and nutrients, then fruits and vegetables can't absorb it. It's not available. So we have a huge focus on nutrient density of our produce. Everything's harvested and delivered to the customers within 24 hours. So you can be eating the produce anywhere from an hour to 24 hours after it was harvested, which is huge. It's also fully ripened on the vine, so all of those vitamins and minerals are being able to be sucked up by the produce this last week that was ripened on the vine, and we have a very high focus on our soil.
Another way to support locally grown food is to shop at local farmers markets. There are many markets in the area that sell locally grown produce, such as Sunflower Market and Herman's, as well as farmers markets during the summer. Sunflower Market is provided with some of their produce from Payson, just a few miles away. Everyone can grow their own gardens as well. It is very simple for families to plant their own gardens in their backyard. Then, they can enjoy produce that has not been shipped thousands of miles to get there, and that costs less as well. A packet of seeds from a gardening store costs around $1, where a package of that same produce, shipped from somewhere else and fully grown, can cost anywhere from $3 to $5 for a dozen. It is also important to know what food is in season in order to be most successful in your gardens. For instance, you would not want to plant peas in the heat of the summer because they will grow too large and won't taste very good. In conclusion, we would like to answer the who, what, where, why, and how of locally grown food. First of all, who does it affect? The answer is that it affects and can be affected by everyone. the production and consumption of locally grown foods is going to become a very important way of life in the near future. For that to happen though, we all need to join in and do our part. What can we all do to help? We can all help this effort along by doing the small things as well as the big things. Individuals and families can do something as simple as plant a small garden in their backyard, support a community garden, or even just purchase produce from locally supported franchises. Purchasing locally grown food benefits you, your family, the local economy, farmers, and the environment. The next question to answer is where. It doesn't matter where you live, you can buy locally. Even if you're someone who lives in a big city, there are still options for you, such as rooftop gardens or even a small herb garden. If you live in a community where there is access to community or home gardens, plant them. And don't forget to buy locally grown food from any stores that may sell them. When should you start buying locally grown food? How about now? Take a trip around your town or city and take a look at stores that sell locally grown produce, as well as farmers markets. This spring, think about starting a garden. Even if you just grow a few carrots, finally is the question of why we need to buy locally. There is so much good that comes from buying locally, such as healthier food, better environment, better sense of community, less pollution, and more. It is time to make a change.